Welcome to the Ignition News. We love to have you here, but remember to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Click that like button, that subscribe button, and leave a comment below. It's going to be a great show. Welcome to the Ignition News. Let's get busy with the truth. Good morning and welcome to the Ignition News. It is March 6, 2026, 3626. Lots of news to talk about today. I want to say thank you to Sandy yesterday, who during the live show helped us to break the news about Kristi Noem being fired from DHS. It's just a good example of why you should tune into the Ignition News. Not only is it a news show, it's part of the Rebel Radio Network, where we teach you how to build community, where we are in fact our own community. And it was a really important example of that yesterday. We teach each other, we inform each other, and we resist together. Good morning, everyone. I do want to tell you, let's do some fun trivia. Ooh, this is probably very personal to me. The Freedom of Information Act was signed into law on this day in 1966. Ironically, Lyndon Johnson, was a staunch opponent of the bill, but he signed it anyways because he wasn't a dirtbag. In 1994, a jury awarded Stella Liebeck $2.9 million after she suffered third-degree burns from McDonald's coffee. This is often cited as a frivolous lawsuit, but the reality is this was a massive corporate PR campaign against Liebeck, who got a cup of coffee that was so hot and it spilled in her lap. She had third-degree burns. It was 190 degrees Fahrenheit. And you think about that, for 15 seconds, it was absolutely traumatic. She was turned into kind of a villain by the corporate media. And if only we had the fortitude to look back and understand that these companies, of course, were never working for us. They were always working against us. And and just imagine how traumatic that would be, to have literally scalding water fall in your lap and you're in a car, you can't do anything about it. And it was just pure negligence. I told my editor I wanted to write a story about a ceiling fan. He told me not to bother because it was pointless. Oh, okay. All right. What is a whistleblower's favorite type of music? Anything with a good leak. That just does not make any sense. That's not a good joke. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ignition News. There's so many stories to talk about. This one's really interesting because it's not being reported by many outlets in the United States of America. A little bit of a less serious story to start out with. But in February, the United States economy shed 92,000 jobs. That's in spite of, I would say, differing economic information from the United States government. The unemployment rate ticked up 4.4%. And what we're seeing is these constant revisions to the data and the jobs numbers. So we shed 92,000 jobs in February, while we're spending all this money on battleships and bombs and missiles. It seems to me that we elected a president because we were supposed to get a better economy. We were supposed to reduce prices, take control of inflation, no new wars. Well, here we are. A year later, we have 8 military conflicts. We have staggering unemployment. And the thing about the unemployment numbers that I tell you all the time, but it's worth repeating for anyone new to the show, the unemployment statistics in America. First, let me pause. Good morning. Welcome to the Ignition News. Please consider following us on your favorite podcast platform: Spotify, Substack, Apple Music, whatever they call it, Apple Podcasts. Back into that. The thing about the unemployment numbers, I'm riffing. The thing about the unemployment numbers is you are only counted as unemployed in the United States of America if you are getting unemployment benefits. So if you lose your job and you file for unemployment, that's how they know that you're unemployed. Well, if you exhaust your unemployment benefits after, for example, 14 weeks here in Nevada, then you're still unemployed or underemployed, and you are not technically counted in the same bucket. So what I think you all intuitively know as well, is that the job market and the job situation in the United States of America is probably the worst it has ever been in my adult lifetime. And this is coming from someone who moved to Las Vegas in the heart of the Great Recession. It is becoming more difficult to find a job, period, but a job that pays for you to have stable housing, healthcare, reliable transportation, to be able to take your family on a vacation. If you have a job right now, you're very, very lucky. But this is the worst job market that I've seen in my adult lifetime. And I think a lot of Americans are feeling that way as well. And the thing is, nobody wants to talk about it. I think part of it is Americans have this sort of indignant sense of shame about it, especially if they're unemployed, especially if maybe they're not making as much money as they used to. Maybe they can't afford to put a roof over their head. I think a lot of Americans, we'll actually talk about this later in the show. A lot of Americans aren't willing to admit how much they're struggling because they're unwilling to admit that they're struggling. They're also not willing to admit what's necessary to move the needle. So happy that you all joined the show today. The first story I want to talk about, or actually this would be the second story I want to talk about, is shocking. We've talked about this obviously many times, many different formats, but you know that in a city called Minhab in Iran, there was a girls' school in the Hormozgan province. It's February 28th. It is a school morning. You have girls between the ages of 7 and 12 are going to elementary school at a school that translates roughly in English to a school called the Good Tree. And then a missile. According to Iranian authorities, 165 people died in that strike. The majority of those were schoolgirls. The youngest was 7 years old. And we now know from independent reporting and from the United States government, although they're not telling you this, we were the ones that hit that school. For days and days, U.S. and Israel pointed fingers at each other, but now an investigation has concluded, an initial investigation. Reuters is reporting that U.S. military investigators released a preliminary assessment that American forces were most likely responsible for killing those girls. Here's what makes it more damaging. Al Jazeera investigation into this follows a pattern, a specific pattern, okay? Here's what we know. The New York Times independently, by the way, reported that actually, let me go back up a little bit. 2 U.S. officials confirmed the tentative findings to reporters. So it's 2 United States officials. They said the report is not complete. The New York Times independently reported that the school was struck at the same time as a series of U.S. attacks on an adjacent naval base. And here's what makes it damning. Al Jazeera conducted some of the best information coming out of the Middle East right now is Al Jazeera, which is wild. They've got a multi-billion-dollar budget, by the way. So they've got missiles hitting the military base, then a school. But a medical clinic sitting directly between the base and the school was not touched. So what does this tell you? You got a military base, a medical facility, and a school. What does this tell you? It was targeted. This wasn't an errant missile strike. It seems that we're learning from other people who engage in military conflict in this area, trying not to get shut down this morning. There's too many important stories to talk about. If this was any other country, we would be openly calling this a war crime. If Iran did this to an ally in the Middle East, we would call it a war crime. We would use it as justification to bomb them. We bombed a girls' school, the United States of America. If you need any more context, let me just tell you story number 3, what the president of the United States said. Time magazine sat down with the president, asked the president this following question. Should Americans be worried about Iranian retaliation on U.S. soil? President of the United States says, I guess. That was it. That's the answer from your commander-in-chief. He did elaborate. He said, some people will die. When you go to war, some people will die. Of course, apparently the FBI is actively monitoring the situation. We've got flights canceled all over the planet. We've got LNG getting shut down, oil production getting shut down. The Strait of Hormuz is getting shut down. So in addition to having to worry about the safety on your own streets, our streets were already not safe enough. We have these masked ICE agents terrorizing our communities. There's no plan. There's no strategy. And I'm building a story right now on this for a different format, but I'm genuinely concerned that we are engaged in a military conflict for a couple of reasons. One of them being that our Secretary of Defense, I will not call it Secretary of War, thanks to whoever's car alarm is going off in the background right now. That's cool. Our Secretary of Defense is a admitted Christian nationalist who believes that this war could usher in end times. He's on record saying it. There's a mosque in Jerusalem. It's called Dome of the Rock. If you've ever seen an image of Jerusalem, it says big gold dome. One of the sort of theories in various sects of obviously the intertwined religions in that region is that the Dome of the Rock gets destroyed and the third temple gets built. You've got IDF agents running around with patches of a third temple. You've got troops apparently whistleblowing, saying that they're being told by their commanding officers that we're going to war for Jesus. Oh, and by the way, in case you forgot, we're running out of missiles. That is the most egregious thing of all, amongst all of this shit that we're pulling apart in real time. You have, I have, we have spent the better part of our adult lives paying taxes, being denied access to things like basic healthcare, basic infrastructure, basic and advanced schooling. It is unrecognizable. I'm on my tangent now. We're not going to get to all the stories. I'm sorry. I went into my son's school and I was comparing his school to how I grew up, and it is noticeably worse. The school buildings, the curriculum, the material, how much we pay the teachers, the pride of the teachers. We're lucky. We are lucky to still have teachers who still care as much about our students as they do. But the buildings, the school administration building, it's all falling apart. There's leaks in the ceiling. There's mold. We have kids that go to schools that are barely distinguishable from like strip malls. They're unsafe. I would argue some of them are very dangerous. Most of the children who are going to school right now certainly are probably never going to be able to afford college, let alone the idea of owning a house. I pray that somehow something changes and my children one day could have the dream of owning a house. But we've spent all this money, trillions of dollars, $1 trillion, $1 trillion every year, $8 trillion going to war for Israel in the Middle East. And apparently we've run out of missiles. We're running out of missiles, interceptor missiles. We're going to have to pull missiles into CENTCOM from Asia Pac. We have spent all of this money and we're getting our ass handed to us by fucking $20,000 drones with no plans. And by the way, when we fail, what do? We carpet bomb a city of 10 million people. But we spent all this time, all this money. We've been denying the American people. Think of how good your healthcare could be with $8 trillion. Think of how good your city's infrastructure, your parks, your education. No one would ever have to pay for college ever. We could have UBI, universal basic income. People could have a social safety net. Graham Plattner actually does a very good job talking about how he has universal health care because he's a disabled veteran, and how because he has universal health care, he was able to leave the military and start his own business because he had the social safety net. Do you realize most Americans do not understand the concept of what a social safety net is? They are not fighting for it because it is so foreign to them. But do you know where it is not foreign? Well, shit, Iran has universal health care, but so too does Israel. This country for which we are now apparently engaged in a holy war with. And I saw someone talking about how there was cluster munitions falling from Iran. Do you know the only 3 countries that have not signed the embargo against cluster munitions are currently at war with each other? America, Iran, Israel. Now we care about war crimes. Now we care about rules of engagement, military rules of engagement. Now we have to be cautious. Now we're concerned about it. Now the neighbor's car is going again. Can't make this up. And when asked if American citizens are going to die on our streets or in a foreign land, the president says, I guess. And this is part of a pattern. And one of the outputs of the pattern is our next story. There's been some pretty damning studies from Pew Research. A new poll just dropped. 3% of Americans describe the morality and ethics of their fellow citizens as bad. Not a little bit. Not room for improvement, but bad. 53% of Americans think their fellow citizens are just bad human beings. I mean, I have to tell you, I'm not surprised. I am not surprised when I learned that my neighbors are apparently gleefully excited about going to war, spending $1 billion a day, bombing a foreign country in the interest of a country that does not care about us, taking people off of health care because we can't afford it, but we can afford to spend $1 billion a day defending another country. I said this yesterday. Yeah, Kodak. Yeah. It is time for us to reevaluate our partnership and our alliance with the state of Israel. Not because we are anti-Semitic, we are not, but because American citizens, when you look at the last 30 years, have been wasting money, lives, hope in the desert. My dog is pissed about this, but my dog is just barking. He is very much supportive of reevaluating this alliance. So let's step back. We've got at least 165 schoolgirls killed. We now know that it is our fault. The president says, yeah, some people are going to die. We now know that American citizens apparently hate each other. Well, that's not news to anyone. They are not separate stories. They are all the same stories. We are living in a government without accountability. A government that has rules that govern you, but do not protect you, that has laws that control you, but do not keep you safe. We have political movements operating without accountability, engaged in a religious war in the desert. When asked if people will die, the president says, I guess. Fascism does not announce itself with a full confession. I am your fascist president. It announces itself with a shrug, I guess. 165 coffins draped in Iranian flags. American flags draping coffins being loaded off of airplanes. Country that is unwilling to admit that it killed 165 schoolgirls. Well, I guess I can see why 53% of Americans find their fellow Americans disgusting, because if you can support that, what has happened to your soul? What has happened to any concept of morality, let alone how we go forward? But this is the problem, isn't it? This is the problem for the authoritarian government, is that we refuse to look the other way. We refuse to put our heads down, and we refuse to stay silent, just like my dog, who very rudely barked in the middle of the show. Because Kodak, my dog, understands that when something dangerous is at your door, you don't shut up until you stop it or figure out what is going on, or you protect your family. Somehow, my dog intuitively knows that when danger is at the doorstep, you defend your family, you defend your country, you defend your neighbors. Somehow, my dog knows more about protection, morality, and care than a large number of American citizens in this country who, for some reason, refuse to wake up and recognize that we are now entering into the second genocide of the last 5 years. I mean, there are actually several more. Each one of those children was thinking before they went into that school about something infinitesimally small compared to the world. What am I going to have for lunch? Did mom pack me a snack? I'm nervous about my math test. I hope it's nice so we can go outside for recess. Every single one of them had a beautiful, infinitesimally small ray of hope about their day that was shattered, destroyed, and double tapped by our government with your tax money, with your tax dollars. And the horror of that is meant to make you look away, but we will not. That's the Ignition News, everybody. It is March 6th, 2026. Thank you very much for tuning into the show today. Your visibility, your knowledge, and your refusal to look the other way is a powerful weapon against American authoritarianism. I know it feels dark more days now than not, but it is up to us to be the ray of light, now more than ever. Thanks for tuning into the show. This has been today's episode of The Ignition News. Please consider following us on all of your favorite podcast platforms, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, or Substack. We're here to deliver to you unfiltered, uncensored news. Let's get busy with the truth on The Ignition News.